we are not done yet. There's one final activity we have to do, and that's project review, really controlling the project and looking for some KPIs, key performance indicators, for our innovation process. So we are now here at the project review stage. And before we did a lot of activities. We looked into the front end of innovation and really recognizing opportunities, generating customer insights and turning those into concepts. We covered the development stage where we really have something like a real innovation project now, where we develop the products, where we implement this, where we manage the ramp up and so on. But at the very end, we always should review what we did, to learn about how we executed the process, to really make sure that the product we developed was the one we envisioned at the beginning before starting it. So let's talk a little bit about project review. And I can say already, it's often considered to be a very boring topic. But in the top list of priorities in companies in really managing innovation, project controlling and KPIs for innovation and reviewing a project always comes up as a very high priority. As an introduction, let me introduce you to the so-called innovation cash curve, proposed by two consultants already a couple of years ago. What they show here is somehow the relation between time and cumulated cash. So cumulated cash means all the money you generate by launching an innovation. And of course, in the idea generation stage, and this is our front-end stage, well, these are actually activities which are pretty cheap. So here the curve just goes down a little bit. Then we come to realization, implementation, real product development, and this is often where the real costs start to occur, especially if we also have to plan not just a product, but also a new manufacturing system or another kind of execution process. So up to here we only invest in our product. Well, then we have the big launch date. Now you would think we should start making money, but if you look closely on this curve, it's still going down. Well, these are some expenses for marketing and communication and convincing customers to buy our product. And so finally, this really goes up, hopefully at a point, and this is where we have the break even exactly. And then hopefully the product generates a lot of cash until at the end it's somehow really diminishing, and this is the end of the life cycle. The product is not so exciting any longer, and not so many additional sales come at this point. So what we have here at the beginning are somehow the startup costs, really our investment pre-launch. We have here some also support cost post-launch investment for marketing, for manufacturing, and so on. And this is the period here that we call time to market, normally really after we have the commitment gate and really also pass the project gate and say now we really have a project. It's normally where we measure really time to market, how long it takes. And then there's a so-called measure of time to volume. That's a measure for the ramp up process until we really are at the volume we envisioned for this product. And actually, I like this very simple graph a lot, and you may use it to recap some of the other videos you saw before. So think about how could some of the measures and methods you remember from our class influence that curve. First, start in your thinking, how would you like to change the curve? So how should the gestalt of the curve change? And then secondly, what particular methods we learned about, we talked about and learned about in this video class will influence this curve in the right directions. So I don't give you the answer on that. Just think a little bit, talk to your peers and discuss about how this should look like. So, but the cash curve already introduces us in the perspective that innovation comes at a cost. It's not just about creating new products, being creative and so on. No, it's actually mean to spend a lot of money. And this is why companies care about innovation success measurement. And there's a lot of statistics and surveys with managers, how they think they should manage innovation. And one is conducted by Boston Consulting Group for almost every year. And they frequently, continuously find that companies really think they are good in measuring the output of innovation. However, they are less confident in the ability to measure the innovation input in the way how they really designed the innovation process. So think about this. And then if you want to reflect on these statements and finding, the first idea would be really to talk about which are metrics that your company uses to assess components of innovation or innovation return. So perhaps stop here. Think about how would you really measure. And you've got already an indication. It could be something about the output of the innovation process. It could be something about the input and the way how the process itself has been managed. Well, I give you some answers. In these Boston Consulting Group studies, frequently as metrics, the following 10 come up. So a lot of companies use the profitability of a new product. They measure customer satisfaction, the incremental revenue of this new product provided to the overall revenue of our company. Then they talk about time to market. They have some measures about how good they are in generating ideas, perhaps just measuring how many new ideas they generated. They have a very broad thing on R&D efficiency. It's probably a ratio of input to output. Time to volume is introduced before. Something then on position number 8, like portfolio health, meaning how diverse is their portfolio of products. Do they only have very new products or very old ones? Where are these products on different stages of the life cycle? It's an idea to manage risk and always have some exciting products out there in the market. And life cycle performance, so how often do products actually break while they are out there? Do they cost a lot of warranty costs? Are we able to sell upgrades? Are we able to continuously excite customers and so on? So if you look into this table, perhaps what's your first observation? My first was that the KPIs that were really widely used are not really innovation specific. Well, of course, profitability and customer satisfaction are some of the ultimate goals of a company, perhaps next to also social and ecological responsibility. However, those are objectives that are of course influenced by our innovation process, but they're also influenced by so many other things. You know, how good is our sales team? How good are our sales partners? How good is our customer service? You know, how good is our purchasing department? And so on and so on. If we go really to those that are innovation specific, well, then we have some are here. And still they're used by quite some companies, and we'll see they're really across the board. Some are input measures, would be like time spent. Some are output measures, incremental revenue. And something are perhaps measures on the process level, like how many ideas has been generated. And this is perhaps from a company perspective one of the big challenges. We now could exercise a little bit of brainstorming, or much better, some thorough research, and ask companies what they actually use to measure innovation, and we could come up with a very, very long list. And what you see here is somehow like a summary of such a long list. And so input-related metrics beyond those mentioned before could be something like financial resources dedicated to innovation. So how big is our budget? How many human resources are we putting in? Do we have separate protected resources for also non-core innovation? Meaning, do we only innovate in the core of our company? Do we only do exploitation? Or do we also have dedicated resources for exploration, for really reaching out for more radical disruptive innovation? How much is the senior management investing in new growth? What's the number of patents filed? Well, this one we also could say perhaps it's the output or the number of patents. But if you remember at the very beginning, one of the definitions of innovation, we said R&D is really to turn money into knowledge. And that's what a patent represents. It's protected knowledge. And then innovation is to turn knowledge into money. And so patent knowledge can be seen as an input to the innovation process. Then we'll come to the processes. Some are moderate what we have from what we put in the system and what we get out. A lot of companies really look on time to market. Why is time to market so important? Well, the idea is if we are first, we have pioneering advantages. Also, we can longer perhaps have the product in the market and sell just more of this. We can beat our competitors as we are the ones that really get proprietary intellectual property for our product and so on. Another process is how broadly are we really looking in our idea generation. It's connected to the idea of open innovation. How good is the portfolio of our innovation projects? Do we have a current growth gap? So we're probably, if the current growth gap, meaning the gap we have between what we are doing and what we want to achieve and how we want to grow in the company, this always should be very narrow. At least we should have projects in place that could help us to identify new products and services to close this gap. And then we can measure a lot and look into a long formative list of distinctive processes, tools, and metrics for other types of opportunities, like how good are we with connecting suppliers, and so on. Well, and finally to the outcome and output. So, of course, we can just count the number of products and services launched. Often we calculate the percentage of revenues or profits derived from new products. And this second here, output-related measure, is actually one that a lot of companies use in their incentive system. Often CEOs have a mandate to the different business units and the business unit leaders that those business unit leaders, let's say, have 30% of all revenues coming from new products, and those are being defined as not being older than 3 or 4 years, something like this. Perhaps also it's clever to measure the percentage of profits coming from new customers, as we really engaged in business model innovation or in exploration activities to really create new products, not just for the same customers, but to reach new markets. We can calculate an overall return on innovation investment, measure customer satisfaction and firm profitability as mentioned before. And as I said before, we could expand this list by many, many more KPIs. So you see already what's the challenge here. The challenge somehow is to not just measure a few things in the innovation process, but put them together in the right balance. And this is exactly what's happening today in some leading companies. So traditionally, very long time ago, there was a common belief that nothing could be done to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of research and development. Well, that's a fuzzy product we can't manage. You hopefully now know that this is not true. Of course we can manage this project and this process. And then there were success stories coming up of some leading companies that really came up with specific performance measurement systems that showed, actually based on what I explained on the previous slide, that there are systems how to do it. One was the technology value pyramid. It's not important to go into detail there. You can Google it again if you like it. But this was one of the first systems implemented by companies to really balance between the different layers of KPIs. And this became important at a time when top executives became more and more concerned about the innovation capability of the company as a whole. And if you, as a top executive, want to change something in your company, and you want to make your company more innovative, you have to work on the incentives. You have to really use the incentives to really create a specific path of action. And these are not just monetary incentives, it could be intrinsic motives that are triggered and so on. But if we set incentives, well, we need some systems to measure if someone deserves, specific bonus and so on for being innovative. And this is when also performance measurement really came into the organizations for R&D in a much larger extent. And this is where we are now today. And this also means, if you connect it to the incentives, that you really should connect your performance measurements to the strategic objectives. And the number one probably tool for these is the balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard is not an innovation-specific method. It was suggested by Kaplan and Norton as a general method, really to have a quantitative but also qualitative and a development perspective on the entire organization. And in the meantime, this balanced scorecard has been adopted for innovation. And again, there are many different concepts here, but the idea is really to have a holistic perspective. Well, of course, we look in the financial perspective, we look in the business processes perspective. We also, however, have to really look on the customer perspective. And it's not just about customer satisfaction, it's an entire bunch of activities and measures which we are here. And we also have a learning perspective. And perhaps it's a little bit confusing that here we have an innovation perspective on innovation, but the idea is we also have to innovate our innovation system. So we also have to measure how good we are, not just to execute a pass. Do we know the big picture by heart? Do we exactly know when is there blue, yellow and the gray pass and so on? No. Do we have the ability to create our own version of the big picture? Do we have the ability to really question if this is the system what we have is still in place? Are we enabling people to catch up with latest skills and methods that are coming up, perhaps for digital innovation? So therefore, we also have these elements in an innovation scorecard that really shows us how we develop our innovation process. And so this, perhaps at the end of this, is a little bit a more comprehensive picture. But you should remember that, as I said at the beginning of this section, this is a field that's surprisingly little developed. We, as researchers, we really don't like this too much. No one is actually teaching this, or very few colleagues. We teach idea generation and perhaps engineering. This is so much more exciting. But as I said, really a lot of executives are really concerned about this. And if you look into job descriptions, when a company looks for a new innovation manager, very often the ability to come up with innovation metrics is one of the key indicators, the key qualifications required by an innovation manager. So I would just invite you, do your own research. Look out for specific classes on innovation performance measurement. They exist, there are also books. And so just reach out and cover this in a little bit more detail.